Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boogie Board Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by SK Ramakuru. He is the Director of Sales, Productivity Strategy, and Analytics at MongoDB. He also happens to live in Austin, Texas, where I live, so I always love having these local conversations. SK, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
I am fantastic, Kevin. I'm just upset that we're doing this in a virtual mode. I would have loved to catch up in a real world scenario in one of the cool breweries or coffee shops or some tiki bars in Austin.
I think you're foreshadowing a sequel. So let's do it. I'm here for that. I always like to start by going in the Wayback Machine. When you're 5, 10 years old, I imagine you do not want to be a director of sales productivity yet because you don't know what that means. So what does a young SK want to be when he grows up?
You are taking me back to my life back in India. I was born in Hyderabad, which is a south central city in India. India opened up to the West in early 1990s, right? That's when the privatization took place. That's when Coca-Cola was back in India. That's when Infosys, which was one of our bigger software companies that we know of, was starting to grow in India. And there was this tech bubble that's happening in this small little town of Hyderabad. And we absolutely had no idea what tech is. And I probably was at 5 years, at my fifth grade or so, like when I'm 10 years or so, I was playing with the mouse balls. I mean, how many people know that mouse would have a ball, and computer would be this big of a machine where you get to touch it only if you're privileged. One computer per every school, maybe. And we used to. I mean, my very first introduction to code was through a Logo and Basic. Who remembers that, right? And from there, I did see the entire tech ecosystem evolve. It was our dream job to get into one of these top-notch Indian outsourcing companies. It took us a lot of time to get there, but it was a fascinating time to grow up in where we were playing cricket, a lot of cricket in India. That was a 10-year-old SK back in India.
I love that. And so when you're playing with the mouse balls, when there is the one computer that it sounds like you may be fighting over with other students, does it interest you from a technical standpoint too? What's driving it? Or is it the mystique of it being the new wave in the area?
I mean, who knew it, right? We absolutely had no idea what this is meant for. And you're a 10-year-old kid in the school, and there is one little computer in a computer lab. And for getting into a computer lab, there's a big queue of people standing in line waiting for their turn to go color in paint or write a small little code where you say RT30 forward 120 to move the cursor. And that was intriguing, right? We absolutely had no idea what this machine was meant for. But slowly we started seeing people around us change. People around us started to, the very first wave of Indian software engineers come up, and they used to tell us the stories of this one area in the city that was vertically growing. And we said, man, there was this beautiful building out there with computers all around. We're like, computers? What do they do? And look at us right now. From there to now, everyone has a giant supercomputer in their pockets, and
Absolutely.
we've seen all of that technology evolve, right, Kevin? And I bet you would have seen it in Austin as well when Dell first came in, when it made a wave of Dellionaires. It would have been very similar phenomena. But I mean, I'm really fortunate to witness all of that. And meanwhile, I also saw the entire country grow in wealth as well, as this started bringing in a lot of software money into the town. And the entire city of Hyderabad had this urban pockets right now of growing urban elite going into this white collar software jobs.
Yeah. And so did you pursue that in schooling? What did you decide to do when you were growing up a little bit and it was time to school and first career iterations?
This was one of, any Indian, if you touch any Indian, we're very good at math, right? Math was one of the, I used to love maths. I used to love problem solving. Anytime when you get a problem, you just break it down into what is your given, what do you know, what are your steps to do, what are you required to find, and what's your answer, right? That entire logic of breaking bigger problems into smaller problems always stayed with me, because I love math. I love math problems. They never scared me. And as I grew up, I started getting exposed to multiple programs, and I learned a bunch of mechanical softwares, just like ANSYS, AutoCAD, ProE, and I started designing surfaces, designing cubes, designing cylinders that fit in, designing the the gas suction cups. And all that design was like one of the most fascinating things to me. Eventually, I landed up practicing Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop was my stress reliever. Photoshop was my part-time gig. Photoshop was my everything. I used to create photos, I used to create designs, I used to learn new tricks. And I don't know, countless hours I spent on Photoshop. And then I went into my engineering. I was a mechanical engineer, Kevin, by the way. I was not a software developer. I was not a systems engineer. I was a mechanical engineer. I did my mechanical engineer with a lot of focus on design. Then engineering has taught me patience, to be honest. How to more and more, it just put a lot of emphasis on math and how to break your complex problems into smaller ones. And eventually, by the time I graduated out of college, I was more focused on this problem solving, more focused on IT, computers, and that's how I landed my very first job in Cognizant, consulting for Hartford Insurance, in the aftermath of 2008. Growing through all the life, Kevin, everything that was happening in US had a ripple effect back in India. Okay, yes, India was feeling Y2K. 2001, India was feeling 2001. 2004, when the smartphone came in, yeah, we were looking for that smartphone. Nokia, Siemens's, then comes Apple, and everyone was dreaming about getting that phone in hand. And reading through these books was super awesome. And when Amazon came in, that in India it was Flipkart, which was an Amazon-like website, which used to ship books, and it was awesome experience that I could place an order for a book and somebody is going to deliver that book back to me within like 2 days. How cool it was, right? We used to order books, pre-releases, everything that used to come and drop at our doorstep. My mom used to say, why is this guy always roaming in front of our door? Because he was always delivering something, because we used to place some order, somebody's going to drop it there. I mean, from there you can see where we have come.
Yeah. Well, so obviously you're a curious person, even at that really early age, starting out in your professional career. So what is it like to actually have these interests, go to school, be interested in problem solving, but then now you're into the working world, right? And so you have some of these problems that you have to solve for a company, which sometimes can be a little less exciting when you're just starting, or maybe you were ready for it right away. What were your first couple of years in the working world like?
Confusion, because when I joined when I joined the workforce, the entire world was reeling the aftermath of 2008 crash, and the very first projects that I was handling are also related to that. The companies were exploring means to understand what just happened and what it meant for those companies, right? Then there was all the data that we had was either in an IBM DB or in a standalone spreadsheet, and we started finding patterns in them, like, hey, what's going on here? Why does this tranche of users, this group of users are always defaulting? Why are these groups of users are not defaulting? Where we can focus on to get back some of those insurance claims. Working for that that was my very first introduction to data analytics without understanding that that is data analytics. Right? We were exactly doing pattern recognition.
Yeah.
But we were doing it at a very low scale, where an Excel had like a 10,000 rows of data. Now you're trying to hand pick the people that are good to be approached again, to restart their payments. Understanding that was miraculous, right? That introduced me to a wave of new thinking, new analysis, new data world, and that prompted me to come to US to pursue my master's in information systems with a lot of focus on statistics and data. So my career actually started with a lot of interest in technology and then transpired into data analytics. So I am a mechanical engineer by choice and a data analyst by profession, but there is a ton of cross-pollination across everything. If you just observe it, it's just logical thinking. Breaking down a problem, pattern recognition become the cornerstones of everything.
And it's very business focused thinking. The first example that you give too of trying to figure out who are the right customers to target, who are those that we need to lay off of. And I'm sure curated a now lifelong relationship between you and databases when you're starting in a spreadsheet and figuring out what else the world has to offer. So take me through that transition. That's a massive personal move to have grown up in India, to move across the world, to pursue schooling, to find a job. What is that like for you?
Not an easy decision, and a little bit of an ignorant decision as well, because I did not know what was happening, like exactly 180 degrees from where I used to stay, right? So, by the way, I applied both for A&M and UT Austin together. so, so I applied for Texas A&M and also UT Austin together for the same exact course. All that I knew about US was through Hollywood movies, Avengers, and New York, and I landed in Houston with an expectation that I used to see everything that I see in US is like Manhattan. And I took a shuttle from Houston airport all the way into College Station. That's a 1.5 hour journey with no 2-story buildings. And I was like, Oh my God, this this can't be US. But it was an enlightening journey, Kevin. I learned a lot. It exposed me to a newer set of problems, and the curriculum there challenged me into a lot of these logical problems that are real world, and connected to a ton of companies back in Austin. And Austin, we used to visit Austin. There were companies like Retail Me Not,
Hmm.
or a ton of coupon websites out there which used to process coupons, and we used to look at them, how do they know what's the right coupon for me. Then we used to go back to uh, market basket analysis. At that time, it was always this one fascinating fact that a diaper buying dad always buys beer. We used to prove it, disprove it, go back to supermarkets, analyze it, and then see whether that is true or not. Solving these real world problems put me in a much more control in data analysis. And
Mm.
then eventually I found a job advising one of the sales and product marketing vice presidents at NXP Semiconductors. So I was advising on sales, what's happening, product adoption, revenues, what's going on in the market, how can we sell more. And over time, it was a very long 10, 12 years of learning into what we are today, right? Exposing to a newer technology every time, and problem solving. Just understanding what are the basics of problem solving has always been my cornerstone.
What was it like for you to partner with a sales organization right away? As soon as you start having a little more practical application in the workforce, sales are notoriously intense clients, very focused on certain things. And I'm curious what the learning curve was for you with sales as an internal client.
I always had fun, to be honest. I always thought myself as one of the person who's going to help them get their numbers. In turn, help the company grow, right? There is no two-way bias to it, right? I'm gonna help you find them. I'm my very first boss in US. I had been through an Iranian boss, a Peruvian boss, a Brazilian boss, and couple of American bosses. And I was exposed to all these different cultural ways of handling things. And there was one of the very first bosses of mine. He told me there is a power in articulating just a simple sentence in a different way so that it can save 5 minutes of my time. And that was very powerful. So if I'm able to articulate a very complex jargony piece into a structured form so that it saves 5 minutes of your time, I was willing to do it when I was young, and I did it again and again. So that 5 minutes saved for my manager would save like 10 minutes for his manager, 10 minutes for his manager. So in turn, whatever the work that we do, I always saw purpose in it, right? And good thing about sales, Kevin, is that every work that you do, you will see a good or an amplified reaction to it in a very quick time. No other field is going to give it to you. Clean up a bunch of leads in a simple Excel spreadsheet and give it to the right salesperson. And if he manages to close like 2 deals, that's a ton of work done. It's
Yeah.
very impressive, and you would never see that in any other role. That always was a kicker to me. And every quarter we used to look at the deals that we closed this quarter, and I was like, man, this is awesome that we closed like 75 millions of deal, or 80 million of deal, 200 million of deal. And I always used to see the purpose and also learn about every product that we used to sell, or else how am I going to advise them? And they are in the product day in and day out. And if as an analyst you are not, then that's a problem. You are asking them to do something that is not possible. So the very first thing I equipped myself is product knowledge. Whether I helped sell silicon, helped sell cloud, helped sell NoSQL database, product knowledge, I go through every damn document that's out there. So, I mean, if it's like difficult for me, then it's very difficult for a seller because you don't have the attention for them.
Absolutely. And I love hearing your enthusiasm of feeling like their number is your number. As a former salesperson, you could just always feel when someone in a partnering role like felt that way.
It is right. It's one of the most difficult jobs, Kevin. So you are trying to influence a person's decision who is trying to disprove you all the time. Selling is a skill. I tried it. I was not good at it. I was not able to sell, but I can sell some ideas. So I can sell some knowledge. So it's one of the, people think it's easy, but it's one of the most respected skill. If you're able to sell, you are definitely in that zone. You can make your living.
Absolutely. And so you're doing this analytical work. You've been in the US now for a while. You're moving up the organization at NXP. At some point you decide to go and join the team at AWS. I was at GCP during the same time you were at AWS, so I know what the market was like, and it was an exciting time. What was the reason for you to make the jump to AWS?
Okay, silicon is a very interesting market. If some technology is going to come out 4 years down the lane, you know it right now, right? Because if a Rivian car is going to come in like in 2024, you knew what's going to happen in 2020. Or if some piece of technology is going to come out later, you knew it, because right now you need to place orders to your wafer fab to manufacture those silicon. Whenever I used to look at some of these databases, some of these processors that go on in building the entire hard silicon infrastructure down there. This is before the cloud world, right? I used to see that in on paper, like somebody is building 1 million racks. 1 million racks. Imagine the scale of it. Each rack has 20 blades. Each blade has a processor sitting on top of it. Now you had 20 processors in one rack and server, and somebody is placing an order for 1 million rack and servers. And the second one comes in, bargains for another million. And the third one comes in, another. What the heck is happening? Who is storing this data and where are they storing? That was like the time when I was at NXP. All this silicon market is blowing up because there were orders coming in from this our cloud providers, like whether it is GCP, whether it is AWS. We had these orders coming in, and it was blowing up. And I was like, what are these guys doing? What's this new technology that's actually racking up this demand for this server, silicon, internet, ports, switches? Everything on the shelves was being sold. One of the ODMs is gonna pick it up. Looking at that, I started learning more about AWS. I started learning more about GCP, and I kind of, that way AWS was not the only company that I was targeting at that time. It was a different kind of a sell, right? In a silicon world, your sales cycle is very different. It's a very structured manner. You know exact how many units are going to go out. You know when they're going to go out. You know when the order is going to come in. You know how to place it. You know who to communicate. Flip it on the side. In a cloud world, you absolutely have no control of any of the things. I mean, the deal, the ink on paper is probably the cookies on our desks are more valuable than that, because until somebody uses it, you don't get paid. Isn't that a completely different type of sell? So this was one sales cycle that I really liked. And the second one that I was targeting was two funnels. So you had something like a Match.com or a Indeed or a LinkedIn, where you need to have a pool of recruiters, a pool of employees. Now, only when you match it, then you get money. It's a different kind of a sales cycle. So I thought I would choose one of them because it's a complete flip on top. And in your very first 10 years of your career, you always need to learn multiple types of things so that you can pick and choose what is good for you or what you are good at. So then I opted for one of them. I did interview for a lot of the other companies as well, but AWS was a really compelling one. We're growing 20% every month at AWS, both in workforce, both in revenues, both in terms of the data, customers, and the scale of AWS was unfathomable for me. I came from a company that was doing like a 8 billion in revenue, a $2 billion business unit. Now you are put into like a $80 billion ARR machine,
Yeah.
which is publishing like 46,000 lines of codes every day. How do you work at that scale? How do you imagine the entire systems are being kept alive? Imagine 85,000 go-to-market people pushing updates to your Salesforce, and yet you are managing it, not crashing it.
Yeah.
The scale is like exponentially higher, and AWS was an excellent learning for me. I got exposed to very talented people who are everywhere right now in this cloud computing world. Across the cloud companies, they are in Google, they are in AWS, they are in VMware, they're in Broadcom, and man, oh man, the learning there was very steep, especially
Yeah.
in maintaining those systems.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a user of systems at GCP during the same time and working on deals that I had only imagined about the scope of before, and the amount of change, the new usage-based pricing, the capacity modeling, like what a wild ride. But then you found yet another exciting venture at some point, and I think everybody listening to this knows MongoDB, and you have a really interesting title where you're the director of sales productivity strategy and analytics. So can you tell me, what is that
Yeah,
opportunity first
that
off, and
that
what
just
intrigued you
means
about it?
I'm cleaning the gutters. That means I'm just making sure I am cleaning the gutters at Mongo and making sure the deals flow through flawlessly, right? We build our systems are not impeding you in, I at least if I don't equip you, I just don't want to be a bottleneck. My job is to make sure the systems are not being a bottleneck for you in executing your sale. More often than not, what happens, Kevin, is that we bog down a lot of the go-to-market teams with process and systems, and the power lies in simplification. That's what AWS taught me. In order for you to be operating at scale, you need to have lean processes. And my job at Mongo is to advocate for those lean processes and give our sellers the best-in-class tooling experience that's possible. And imagine MongoDB goes after AWS sockets and wins. How is that possible? You're competing against scale with quality. This is another type of strategy, another type of experience, another type of learning that we need to equip our go-to-market teams to go into the field day in and day out and win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we make sure our teams have. Is that 2 years back, Kevin, we put in we're the very first company probably to start with a small little Slack tech knowledge chatbot. When OpenAI came out with their GPTs, probably in like September or June, July, and by September we had a live running production chatbot that was answering technical questions, and that was another revolutionary thing, because you could chop off like 30% of the questions that go to a technical CSM. For a technical CSM, you could chop off 30% of the questions that go to a SA. So you are trying to equip them, democratize a lot of this knowledge, put it into the hands of the go-to-market people so that they can go and win. Coming up with these solutions and also processes is part of my role.
And so, how do you, in that situation, it's always a balance between not introducing too much new technology so that the change management burden of the sales team grows higher. But I know that you're also having to keep your eyes up and very interested in AI and other new technology that may be available to you. So how are you thinking about AI broadly? Personally, you probably can't share how Mongo's thinking about it specifically. How do you manage that balance, and what's most exciting for you when you do have your eyes up on the future?
Okay, this has been one of the core philosophies, Kevin. I learned over time by talking to a lot of the sellers is that I don't want to add one more step in your process. So if you are working in Salesforce, I better enhance the workflow inside Salesforce. If you are working in Slack, I better enhance your workflow in Slack. No additional UIs. If I say that, hey Kevin, by the way, to get this access now, you go log into a separate web UI, and now you have this data there. It's a waste of time. People don't like it, and it's an additional step, additional complexity, additional authentication, additional process that I need to maintain, curate, and push some updates to. Not an optimized workflow. So focusing on those workflows and understanding how many times the seller or a go-to-market rep or a CS or a SA is switching the context. The more you switch a context, it is not good. Every step you're going to lose some attention, you're going to lose some interest, and it's a productivity loss. So for us, we want to stay very, very close to the field in understanding those transitions and minimizing them wherever possible with AI, not introducing a new one. That is what AI is capable of, slashing out like a couple of clicks here, couple of clicks there, couple of clicks there. Overall, you can gain 5%, 5%, 5%. Overall, you're 15% more happier. Right? Not 15% more happier. Sometimes the knowledge that you gain from it helps me to retain you longer, which is a Christmas for me.
Absolutely. I love that as a metric of success for you. Okay, so like a last question here. You've now been rolling in this space. We started with the Curious SK, growing up in India. You've now been in Austin for a while. You've seen a lot of change here. If you were going back and talking to yourself when you're in college, thinking about, your first job and then making the move to the US, what advice would you give yourself now?
Oh man, that's a very tricky question. I probably would not give any advice. I would just go have more fun, spend more time in Northgate, go for a couple of more Aggie games, which I do. I do regret not going enough games. I was in A&M when Johnny Manziel was just graduated out of college, right? You can understand the euphoria that entire college town was going through at that time. So a couple of more Aggie football games and just some more fun maybe. If I change anything, probably there's a butterfly effect. Something else changes.
I love
But
that.
but overall, man, no regrets there. And learning is much more a continuous process. I think we are right now in a generation where this time appears very similar to like 2013, 2014 for me. When we first introduced cloud, when we first introduced reporting, very similar phenomena is happening in the market where we are first introducing AI. So go learn AI, learn how to architect things, be more analytical, And don't shy away technology. It's going to come back. It's going to come back. People are going to use it. There'll be more and more and more and more and more apps that are built on top of this AI, and it will eventually learn how to coexist with it. Just like Google Cloud. Who thought you would be storing photos in Google Drive? How many CDs do we have in our home with all those photos?
Yeah. That's good advice. So stop and smell the roses, make learning a continuous process, and be ready for some new technology. SK, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to episode 2 coming to an actual tiki bar near you.
Awesome, man. Awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much, and all the best for you.